Hey there, and welcome to another episode of my Factorio 1.0 tutorial Let's Play. I'm Xterminator, and welcome back. And I want to just start off by giving a really quick apology that I missed an episode yesterday. First episode in about 2 weeks since release that I missed an episode. And I really didn't want to, but I ended up going to have dinner with my family, and by the time I got home, I was extremely tired and just I truly, physically, mentally did not have the energy to record, so I apologize for that. I did get one video out today on my predictions and expectations and hopes for features in the next Factorio update 1.1, so check that out if you haven't. Saw some really cool thoughts on that you guys left. But today, what we're going to do is some stuff with rails and trains. So we're kind of getting to a point here where our important resources are starting to dwindle a bit. Coal in particular is very much almost fully tapped this patch here. We could fit a few more miners here with some belt rearrangement, but overall it's fairly well saturated with miners, and our iron patch is getting there as well. You can see a fair few here with the red indicator. They just have run out of ore completely and have stopped. There's not a ton of room left here. Copper still has a fair bit of room, and then as does stone, but we really aren't using those quite as much. Copper, we probably will here in a little bit. But I think it's time to start doing some things in regards to rails and trains. And, because we really just need to beef up our entire production. You can see here still our steel is very, very lacking. It is, due to both iron or, shortages, and even if this was reaching the end, this probably still would not be enough production. So we just overall need to kind of increase the entirety of our production and start working on trains. So luckily, we have built up some rail. Not a lot of rail, sadly, just due to the general lack here. But we have a little over 300 rail here. And there's a few things we need. Actually, there's quite a few things we need for a train system to even begin with a train system. Rails, obviously, being the first one. We also need train stops. Build a couple train stops here. These are something I will later automate in our hub or mall, along with the locomotives and the cargo wagons. However, I personally tend to just handcraft the initial 1 or 2 trains worth of these that I need, just so I can get things up and running, and then I can throw these in the hub or the mall once my overall production is going well. So we're just going to handcraft these. Right now we're missing engines for this. Luckily we do have engines made right here, and you can actually control left click over assemblers and it will just take out the buffer. So assemblers hold a certain amount of products that they've created kind of in their buffer slot. It seems to depend a little bit. You can see this is holding 9 science packs, so it looks like about 4 crafts worth maybe, because this is 4 as well and this makes 1. You can hold control and left click and drag to pick up all that's in their kind of buffer area there. So that can be really nice. And we actually need a few more past that. So at this point I'm just going to run over the belt with F to pick those up. And then we do need some gears and steel to actually make these cargo wagons. Now there is another component to trains themselves, which are the liquid wagons. And it's pretty straightforward that the liquid wagons are intended solely for carrying liquids. You can actually carry liquids in cargo wagons if you put them into barrels first. And in one of the previous episodes, I actually just saw a comment, I believe it was later yesterday or maybe this morning. Someone asked if I was going to cover, moving liquids around with barrels. And I think that I will touch on that at some point here, because it's something that can be quite useful in certain situations and is maybe not super intuitive and just not used or recognized very much. So we will cover that. However, for trains, I definitely do prefer the liquid wagons. One is just simpler since you don't have to go through a barreling process, and 2, it's actually very cool because you get to use pumps into the wagons, which are a really, really neat feature. I just really love the way they look and the way they work, and we'll show you that here shortly. Now, of course, we are getting attacked fairly heavily up here. Looks like a bunch of spitters have found their way to us. Probably should head out and do a little bit more combat, but I do want to cover some things with rails. So I also want to preface this by saying that we're not really probably going to get to the point this episode of actually creating an entire rail system. In fact, we're definitely not, because trains are a fairly complicated and complex system, and there's a lot to cover even in the initial setup. As I realize I have no ammo, we may have to use a combat bot here. Luckily, it looks like the turret took care of them. Should go pick up some ammo as well. So it is worth noting that I want to cover things in as much detail as possible in regards to trains. So we probably won't expect to get but by any means an entire train system or rail grid or anything like that set up this episode. It's going to be a multi-episode, multifaceted thing, as I've mentioned before. So we do have some turrets. Of course, we have no ammunition for these turrets, so we need to go grab some, and then we'll work on trains. And I think the first resource we really do need to bring in is coal, because there is this little bit of expansion possibility here with the iron. The coal, there really is not that much, and coal, if coal runs out, I would venture to say we're actually almost in more trouble than if iron runs out or starts to run out, because if coal starts to run out, we have no power, which shuts down just the whole basin. Is very hard to recover from when you don't have, more coal in your base. Whereas iron, you can kind of, work with a little bit of iron. It's very hard to work with a little bit of coal because usually that means you don't have any power. It looks like, of course, they're attacking us again as we walk away. This is a bit of a problem. This is partly just a lack of proper preparation on my part. I think I'm going to extend the buffer we have there, and I'm going to just pick up some more resources because we're likely going to lose some turrets as well as some miners again. That's fine, though. We'll just make our way over there. Should be fairly easy to take care of, and then once we stick this ammo in there, we should be able to defend that properly. And we should go destroy the base wherever that may be. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's the one up there, so we probably should destroy that before we work on rails here. So let's just put these back down. We did lose 2 turrets, unfortunately. But at least now we have the ammunition for these guys. They can do this. I'm placing them just kind of so they can cover each other here a bit. And let's make one more miner. So the spitters, as you can kind of see, I did mention last episode, the spitters can be very deadly. The spitters are quite... they do a lot of damage, and they can potentially outrange your turrets. Also, I do want to research automobilism here, if we can find it. Because this will give us the ability to make a car, which will make traversing these longer distances much easier. But kind of as we walk out here, we can start discussing trains a bit. So we have these components of trains, but along with that, we also have signals, which I believe I still need to unlock, rail signals. So this will unlock... two things. It'll unlock rail signals and then rail chain signals, and they work very differently. It'll be a lot easier to explain them in the moment when we actually build them, so I will save that explanation for then. But the signals are what's going to basically allow you to it's going to allow you to have multiple trains running on multiple lines and pass each other and stop and have proper junctions without a lot of backups or collisions or anything like that. Okay, so these worms are a bit of a problem. They are doing a large amount of damage, but luckily we can take care of that. Can't let this guy get away. He may go off and make a new base. Whew. Okay, so those medium worms, there's another base right here actually, which may also be where a lot of that was coming from. I'm gonna go ahead and grab a fish. You can come over here and just right-click a fish to pick it up. Heal ourselves there a little bit. We unfortunately do not have the ability to make many more defender capsules. 3 turrets hopefully should be enough. We are taking some very heavy damage from these worms, so that is something to keep in mind. Hopefully I don't die in this venture here. I think I'm gonna kill the bugs first, so I can. And also, you will notice that the poison there actually does slow us down. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. It does make, you know, pushing a little bit more difficult. Okay, so there we go. We just got to spam those down again. We're just hitting the key after sign, number 1, and then click dragging, and then hitting number 2, and holding control and right-click dragging to quickly place the turrets and stick the ammo into them. And that's definitely, I think, where the majority of those attacks are coming from. We do have another base right here. It's not quite in our pollution yet. And with the current supplies we have on us, I don't feel comfortable attempting to go and remove that base. So we have another one right here, actually, that is in pollution. It's quite tempting, actually, to see what we can do. We have 4 spawners, a few worms. I'm looking to see if there's medium worms. That's where we may encounter some problems. I'm going to take a robot here, and I made a poison capsule, so we're going to test these out because the poison capsules will do damage to biters and worms. They will not do damage to bases. That would be perhaps a little bit too strong, but it can do quite a lot of damage to the biters as well as the worms. So that you can see he's just getting damage as he runs through there. The turret finished him off, but I'm going to try to let my bot do a lot of the damage because they have infinite ammo, essentially. You made ammo that goes into them, and then they just have infinite ammo until they die, of course. So, and you do have to be careful. You can see I'm taking damage here. This kind of spit, this acid, does stay on the ground for a bit, and if you walk over it, it will damage you and slow you again. So that's something to keep in mind that a lot of times I don't properly keep in mind. I have died to that before. It, you know, among all the foliage and the biter kind of creep ground there and everything that's going on, it's very easy to, you know, to not see it and just accidentally step over it. But let's work on trains. So we need, I like to start at least for my first train, train and train system, I like to just start with where we want things to be delivered. Because, you know, much like when we build a base, as I've covered, I think, before, I like to start kind of at the end point, our destination. And then kind of build backwards from there, so I can just make sure we have the proper space and an arrangement and layout for, you know, what we need. So we are going to bring in coal. And primarily we are needing coal in this general area. So it would make sense to bring in coal over here. Of course, we do need coal for plastic, but that's already on the bus, which we're feeding from up here. So it really would not make much sense to have coal coming in anywhere else except somewhere over here, because then we would just have to reroute lines and potentially run lines actually backwards if it came in from some other direction. And looking at this, we have 2 choices for coal. We have coal way down here, and we have coal way up here. Both of which are far away. I feel like they're about equally as far. This one's going to be easier to get just because we can do a lot more straight lines. You know, we can just build an outpost and hook up a rail and just come straight down and then straight over and then straight down again, or some variant of that. Whereas this one, we're either going to have to do a bit of a curve around the lake or go way out of the way. If we stick with straight lines, we may have to come way over here and up here and over, which isn't the biggest deal. It's just I think it's potentially a bit more out of the way. We also want to avoid this copper patch. As you may imagine, building over ore patches with rail or any structures is not really something you want to do if it's an ore patch you plan to actually use, which this one is, because then I'll just have to tear it up and rearrange later, and it doesn't look very good either. So I think this one is, based on what we revealed, this is a better coal patch. This one, for some reason I'm tempted to go with this one, but I think this one may actually be best. The only reason I'm debating this one is because You can see the size of these bases we're getting here. I think this one is actually potentially in a more dangerous area than this is, because the general base size over here seems to be smaller. We do have these cliffs to consider, of course, and then I do feel like we're going to go for this one. So the reason I take this into consideration is because, at least in this situation, it's going to kind of dictate the direction that our station faces, and that, you know, we have a train coming in to our base. And we need to start, at least the way I like to set things up, we need to start with a rail station, a train station, where we're going to have the train arrive and drop off these materials. And I ideally would like to leave room for additional stations, because we may need, you know, iron also comes in very much in the same area, and so does stone. You know, so I would like to leave room for additional stations here if we'd like. And luckily, we do have a decent amount of space here where we're not really doing anything with this space, you know, because we're building this direction. So we can kind of just reserve this entire area for stations. Now, of course, we do have this water, which is a bit annoying, but luckily we do have the ability, or will have the ability soon, once I research it, to make landfill, which will let us just kind of terraform and fill in water with land if we need to just cut off a little bit of this lake here. Maybe hide some of that polluted water. You can see how polluted the water is getting over here from the mining and the power. I love this. So we can do vertical stations, or we can do horizontal stations. So this is kind of where the real tutorial and information aspect for the trains comes in here. So there's really no difference, at least right now in the game. There used to be a difference, just a bit of history for you, between vertical and horizontal stations, but luckily there's not really now. You can do both perfectly fine. There's no advantage necessarily or disadvantage to either one. It's mostly situational, depending on your setup and how much room you have, and visually what you like to see. Just because we are to some degree limited this way and not very much this way, we have a massive amount of space here. I'm actually going to build, I think, horizontal stations, purely for the reason that the distance we have here is going to be more than long enough for a train to fit in a station, and then we can expand, I won't say infinitely, but very, very far upwards or downwards, just adding, you know, more stations one after the other, etc. Whereas if we did them vertical, we're limited to just basically this area, maybe a bit more once we landfill, where we can put stations. So I do want to start a station here. So to build rail, just much like belt, you can rotate it before you place it. You can't actually rotate it on the ground, so that is a difference. And then you can either place it one by one like this. You can also just kind of drag, but what's different is, whereas with belt, if you drag, it just actually places it. Whereas rail, even without holding shift or any other hotkeys, if I just, if I place it out, if I place it kind of not directly on connected to a rail, it will place like belt, like this. However, when you mouse over, you'll see the difference. So here it's just, you know, just normal placement, just kind of like belt. Whereas here, if you start it from on top of an existing rail, you get this kind of yellowish box and then arrows indicating which way you want to build it. And if you just click and then just walk, it'll kind of designate a section here of 7 rails. And you can kind of, if you just move your mouse, I'm not holding any buttons, I've just clicked once and I'm just moving my mouse, and this will let you kind of indicate a direction. If you want to turn here, if you want straight, if you want a partial turn, you know, kind of just, you can drag it backwards to do a smaller one. And then once you click, it'll actually place that in this entire section. So if I click now, it'll place that full straight section. And if I come out one more time and click, it'll place another section. And I think I'm going to come out about 5 more rails. And again, I'm just clicking and it's maintaining this. And now I'm going to just pull my mouse upwards and click again, and it will place that curve as it's shown. Okay, so this makes rails a bit easier and quicker to build, because you can do it in just entire sections. Now, there is an option to kind of do this and even longer sections if you hold shift. So you can see it's now bringing up our ghost icon, and if I do the same thing and hold shift, I can make this as long as I want. I'm just, I can make this as long as I want it to be. And then if I let go of shift, though, it pulls it back. So you want to make sure to hold shift while you're doing this. But again, keeping in mind, this is going to be a ghost. So if you have robots, which again, we haven't gotten to yet, but if you have robots, then they would go and place this the entire distance that you've placed the ghost, 30 rails in this case. And you can kind of determine a direction. It's a little bit more finicky, just because, you can go a bigger distance, so it isn't as, fine-tuned, although you can hit R while you're holding this, and it will kind of give you different layouts. So right now I'm just hitting R, and it's just kind of, selecting through a selection of different options based on where I'm holding my mouse. A lot of these are still not something I would really want. So typically I just do it like little sections at a time. We've now almost gotten to a point where I've lost the original way I wanted it. So I'm just gonna, let go of shift to bring it back, and then hit shift again. And I'm just gonna click, and you can see this lays down the ghost. Now, of course, I could just follow this and just place it just normally on top of the ghost, and this can be a good way to kind of just plan out and indicate where you want things, which is quite nice. Once we get robots, this will, of course, be a very great feature. And one thing I also want to show you, we haven't really done anything with blueprints yet, aside from the copy-paste feature, which is technically kind of a blueprint. Okay, we got that. That's, not really sure what that's from. I think some other mod I had for my stream enabled. I'm not entirely sure why that's there, but we are going to unlock, let's get the tank. The tank actually going to be a fantastic combat tool. So we can ignore that. That is not part of vanilla. I did not realize I had that mod enabled somehow. But one thing that's new in 1.0, which is fantastic, is you can actually place blueprints through the map. So if I hit Control C, I haven't actually tested this with the copy paste feature, so we'll learn this together. And I copy a section of this, and I go into the map. You can see here, I now have I can see this in the map, and it's green, indicating it's a ghost opposed to this, which is actually placed. And I can place this, and I can manipulate it, rotate it in the map view here. Now, anything that's highlighted in red, it just means that it can't place something there. In this case, it's because there's trees. But much like you can do in the actual player view, if you hold shift when you have something like this selected, it will mark these for deconstruction. You see it's now allowing it to place, and it will mark those for deconstruction. Also works, of course, through the map view. So if I do this, it's kind of made it a purple color. I'm not sure how well you can see that on the desert here, but it's made it a purple color. It's placed it in the actual world, and it's marked these for deconstruction, whatever was in the way. This works with cliffs, rocks, and trees. And then if you have a blueprint with landfill in it, it will actually auto do ghost place the landfill over water, which is quite nice. So that's a really, really great feature. Once we actually get like rail blueprints and stuff, like full sets of them, we can place from the map view, which is significantly faster, much easier. So that's kind of just general rail placing. However, one thing I really want to cover, and maybe to kind of close out the train stuff here, or this episode, is placing stations and directions of trains. Now, this is a lot more indicated and represented in the current state of the game than it was when I first started playing the game many years ago. However, this still confuses people, I think, because there still seems some questions here and there about it. And personally, it stumped me to no end when I first started playing. Again, it is more clear now. But when you take a station, there's a very, very particular and specific way a station needs to be placed for a train to actually work with it. And it has to do with the side of the rail that you place it on. So as soon as I take a station, you can see all these green little boxes here on the side of the rail. And this is just indicating places you can actually put a station. I can put a station here, or here, or here. And it's just, when I just move my mouse, it's just auto locking to those sections. So that's really nice, because it kind of just auto locks there. So even if I do a ghost, it will just make me place it on one of those. However, you'll notice it has these white boxes by it, as well as the arrows pointing a direction. Those boxes are indicating where the train itself will go. So the first one, at the very least, is a locomotive, because obviously you would need a locomotive to pull in here. There are actually ways where you could kind of have it to not be a locomotive there, but that's something that is not used very much in just the edge case, so we won't cover it. But let's just assume that first one is a locomotive, and then the ones after that can be whatever, locomotives, cargo wagons, fluid wagons, and it shows you just kind of a general, it shows you a placement of where these go, out to 5 in total. And this is really nice, because this means when you go to place your station, you can kind of automatically see where things are going to line up. And then when you go to place a locomotive, if you start it at this station, which I'll show you, it will auto lock it to the correct position in the station. Okay, but what I was referring to a minute ago about station placement, and it being very specific, is the station needs to always be on the right hand side of the train, as if you were driving the train. So if you imagine you were in the train, you were conducting it, you're driving it, your right side from that imaginative point of view is where the station needs to be. Or another just visual easy way to tell now is the way the arrows are pointing. That is the way that your train needs to come in towards the station. So if I place a station here, it will not work to have a train coming from right to left to this station. That the train will give a no path error, which is something you may encounter when you first start with trains, and that just means it cannot access the destination, and that's because the train is on the wrong side. You can't have, it can't do both. It can't have, a train can't go to a station that's on the right hand side and the left hand side. You can have a train go to 2 different stations. So I could have a train come to this station and then like go through and do a loop and turn around and then come to this station in its schedule, but you can't have it go 2 different directions to one station. It always has to come in from the direction those arrows are pointing. So in this case, this is indicating that a train is always going to pull in from the left side towards the right side, towards that station. And if I place it over here, this is just doing the opposite. That means this train is pulling in from right to left. And that's very important, because that will hopefully help you not get as many no path errors and get your trains working properly. So we are going to place this where I would actually want this, which is perhaps somewhere about here. I can pull up this extra rail. We don't need it the way I'm going to build trains. There are two main ways you can build trains, which I think will be covered next episode. It's a bit too much to touch on here. But there is a design type where you will actually have it pull through the station and then kind of turn around and do a bit of a loop. I personally don't build those type of trains, but it is a very, very viable way to build them. It just kind of comes down to personal preference and what you like to do and what systems you like to work with. And if we now take a locomotive, so here you can see out here I can just slide it wherever I want. It's still showing the indicator, which is very nice. But I can just place it wherever I want, in between these, over here. However, as I go close to the station, you're going to see it's going to snap to that first section. And there we go. See how it just snaps there? This is really nice. Hey, we got an achievement. Build a locomotive. Because this is guaranteeing that this is where the train is always going to end up when it pulls in. Because the train is, it has a very specific kind of orientation with the station, a distance, past the station and at the station it pulls to. So this is really nice because you can now safely place your wagons, which also lock on, by the way. You can see out here I can drag it as I move it. It locks on. And that little those 2 green circles with the green line are indicating this is connected to the locomotive. If I place it out here, it's not connected. So you can do this and it's going to lock there, and this is now all one section. You can kind of see that when you mouse over. It shows the green circles and the lines. And this is just nice because I can safely do this knowing that if I, say, put inserters here to unload this, they're always going to be in the correct placement and lined up correctly, because this is always where this is going to line up when it comes in here, unless I change the actual layout of the train or something. So this is just very nice. Now the way I like to build trains is to actually have a double-headed train, to have a locomotive in the front facing one direction and having a locomotive in the back facing the opposite direction. because this allows the train to pull into the station and then drive back out the direction it came, basically. Whereas if you do not do this, this is when you would need the other system, which we'll go more in detail for next episode, where you would have it pull out and kind of do a loop to go back around and leave, because it can't, can't just randomly do 180 right in this space without a locomotive on the other side. So I'm going to build all my trains like this, just in this with the loco on each side. The size may vary and stuff, but they're going to be in this general orientation. That's just what's easier for me to understand. That's what's easier for me to build with. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, which I will cover. But I think that's going to do it for this episode. This is the basics. This has at least gotten you to setting up your initial station and getting some rail placed. And we will work on signals here, maybe next episode, maybe the episode after. That's a pretty large subject in and of itself. But I think that will do it. So next episode, we will cover some more rails. We will get this set up. We will hopefully get some more rails drug out towards that coal patch, and I'm going to go defend this. Luckily, our turrets got them. Still being attacked, which is quite interesting. Very confused as to from where. Maybe over here. They will actually path around the water, so this is actually quite possible. But I think that is going to do it for this one, guys. I hope you found it helpful and informative, at least so with the trains and such. And if you did, a like is much appreciated, so it can help other people find it and hopefully help them as well. And if you're new to the game, hopefully it helped you not get stuck as much, and I hope you're enjoying the game. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe so you can keep up with all the content that is coming out. I would love to hear your thoughts and stuff below, as always, any questions you have in regards to the specific things we talked about here, or if I forgot something in regards to these specifics, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer and respond. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.